Hello and welcome back to another event preview with me and my now co-host, I guess I'm going to say, Yumi, becoming a bit of a recurring feature. And we're of course going to be looking into the IEM Cologne play-in and main event, trying to find out who our favourites are, who our dark horses should be, and also the general narratives of the teams as we play out this tournament in Germany. So, Yumi, how you been? How excited are you for this big event?
Yeah, I know it's a good time. I'm just glad that events are kind of normalizing now. Like we're getting actually like consistent lands where it's not been present for the past couple of years. So to see it to sort of go in full swing, and we go from like smaller tier events to bigger tier events. It's nice that there's a bit of like some normalcy has been restored at the very least.
Yeah, it does feel like we're getting back to the real Counter Strike schedule. Cologne, the cathedral of Counter Strike, it's considered a pretty big event even when it's not a major. So it's always fun to see that crowd, see the hype, see the biggest teams play. So let's start in the play-in. We still haven't decided, of course, everyone who will be in that LAN Access Arena. So who is your favourite of the teams at the play-in coming in?
So my favorite is probably just going to be heroic. I know that they've changed a player. I know I could talk about like Vitality's recent results. They make it to the finals of Blast Spring. There's a few different people that I think you could sort of tie into a favorite, but I choose heroic just simply because I think they're the most consistent team. I don't think changing one player is going to affect their standing so much, and I think they're pretty much the only team that I would guarantee make it out of the play-in stage just because they've been so consistent throughout their entire tenure. I do think that people kind of overestimate or I guess underestimate the sort of impact that Refresh had in that roster because when they saw Jabby get picked up because he was the last sort of like lingering member, I suppose, aside from Hooksy to get acquired from that Copenhagen Flames roster. I guess Zyphon is
Yeah,
still in there
Zyphon's
as
still on
well.
there.
Yeah, yeah. They're still floating in the ether. But people had their eyes on Javi for quite some time, and then when they saw him get the upgrade, I think people were more excited about that as opposed to thinking, is he actually better than Refresh? But
Hmm.
I think Heroic just wanted a little bit of extra inspiration. Like this is the guy that delivered like the 1v5 clutch that still lingers in the back of the mind of NAF when they play 5v1 situations. Like
Yeah.
he got in people's heads and he had some really, really high impact rounds, but I just expect that they're going to be a bit better at sort of opening and sustaining those rounds as opposed to being forced into more of those clutch situations. That's my hope for what Jabby brings and whether or not Heroic have been able to integrate him properly.
Yeah, but he adds another dimension to your like opening gambits, opening maneuvers. We saw him a lot of the time on like Vertigo, Copenhagen Flames being boosted up over and over again towards the big bomb site,
Mhm.
taking those duels. And yes, he provides a great number of opening frags and really some big impact moments. So it's a nice addition. I think it'll make them, yeah, fragging wise more consistent across the board. As Refresh, as you said, had those great clutches, but yeah, maybe wasn't as consistent in the trading game in that early to mid round, maybe not as present. Hopefully, Yabi brings a bit more of that. I've gone a different way with my pick. Obviously, I thought Heroic's a good shout. They're one of those teams where you don't expect them to lose to anyone below a certain level, right?
Mhm.
They just expect them to take care of business. They're above this sort of tier. That's kind of the same philosophy I've put into my pick, and I'm going to take Vitality as my favourite for the play-in. I mean, yes, they haven't been the level everyone expected of them. Everyone hoped they would be when they formed. But yeah, as I've said in my most recent video, they do need the most time. They were doing the biggest changes and really, as I said, breaking the paradigm of how we build teams. Either you go full international and just like, English speaking young puggers with a good IGL, or you stick it to your nationality and you're like, yep, we're Danish, we're Polish, we're whatever. They went a complete different route, like mixing two solid, well founded, like Counter Strike
Yeah,
regions,
ambitious, right?
quite ambitious, and it finally looks like it's paying off. But even in the last 6 months, for the most part on LAN, they don't lose to teams who aren't elite. They have losses to, I think, Outsiders and NIP and Best of Ones, and almost every series they've lost has been phased G2. What more could you want? They're still not a massive disappointment. They're not falling down the ranks to this point where they won't make it through this play-in. They should be comfortable, and honestly, I don't even see them dropping a map going through this bracket.
Yeah, I remember thinking and looking at Vitality and just thinking I in my head, I couldn't in good faith pick them because I remember we talked during the sort of Blast Spring pre-show that was
Yeah,
like these guys could very well bottom out their group, and I feel like it
they
would have been a
could.
good thing. There were too many question marks about which version of Vitality you got because sometimes they looked good going into events, like their comms seemed on point. Rotates didn't seem like they were delayed. You didn't see players like hesitate where they would instantly react before. And then the next event all of those same problems would crop up. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it might be a good time for Vitality. Maybe they hit a stride and they go event to event where they actually look like the same team in these two different versions of themselves, or two different um, these two different turnouts for them, rather. Um, but yeah, in my mind, I couldn't in good faith pick them because I was just like, I still have my reservations. Like, it is only
Yeah.
an 8-team bracket in Blast. This is a much deeper pool of teams, and I suppose it just turns out like I think I do have them making it through, but I still have this back of the mind scratch. Like, these guys could get upset by something a little random.
Yeah, I mean, I get why you want to feel that way. I mean, yes, there have been events where they've really not performed, but it's just I couldn't argue with the list of results that I was faced with. I just put 2022 LAN Vitality. All
Mhm.
the losses are to the best teams. They beat everyone else. So I'm not worried about that. When we get to the main event, maybe then it's a bit harder to call them a favourite, even though they should be expecting themselves to make a top four run, probably a grand finals run if they're being realistic. Like, they're supposed to be a championship level team. Then we can start having doubts and conversations again, because they haven't shown us they can consistently get past G2, consistently get past FaZe, actually give a challenge to Navi. We haven't seen that yet. But no, this first stage, I'm not even slightly worried. This should be a breeze. Just crush these fools, move on, and then we'll get another crazy rant from Apex in French when they lose to someone in the quarters. Dark Horses, though. A bit different. A team maybe not everyone's expecting to go through. Who have you got as your pick for a Dark Horse side?
I suppose before we do this, we should like sort of clarify the teams that I think we kind of expect to go through. Like, in my head,
Yeah,
it's Heroic, Vitality, Outsiders, maybe Big Spirit. Almost want to say,
yeah.
um, and that's kind of it. I think
I
that's
mean,
about
I'd
maybe
put
Astralis.
Astralis. I'd put Astralis
Yeah,
on that
yeah,
level because, yes, we've been very, very sad watching them a lot of the time. But against the teams they should bully, they quite typically
yeah.
bully them. They have been very good at putting the Mobby Stars of the world to rest. Maybe not the most comfortable fashion, but with Blame F dropping 40 and then winning 16-13, still a win. And they've been doing it consistently enough to where I'm not too worried about them. I wouldn't call them a
And
dark
Zipex
horse by
has
any means.
and Zipex has been killing more people as well. That helps. So
Yeah, double digits is always nice to see from our
yeah,
old
yeah.
clutch minister.
From the longest contract. So yeah, probably those six teams, right? Like Red Vitality, Outsiders, Big,
Yeah.
Astralis, Spirit. Even Spirit's maybe not even a favorite. Um,
Spirit's
so
a weird one. I think we have to talk about them at some point, but yeah, Spirit's
yeah.
an odd one.
So my dark horse, I'm weirdly going to choose Sprout. I was not impressed with them when I watched them at conference, and even coming into Valencia, I don't think that they're playing the best version of Counter Strike, but I do think that they have like a decent set of teams that they're going up against in their side of the bracket. So I'm just having a look. Their opening round is against Heroic, but
The
then
opening round's against your favourite, so that's a loss.
yeah, yeah, and I expect Mouse to beat Pain, and then I sort of see Mouse kind of crumbling versus Sprout because I actually think Sprout have the sort of better
Oh, so
firepower when
hang
it
on, hang
comes.
on. Do you think Mal's are going to lose to Pain or beat
No,
Pain?
no, no. I think Mals are going to beat Pain, and then Sprout are going to beat Pain in the lower bracket,
Okay,
and
that's what
then
you skipped, right? Okay, yeah.
yeah, yeah, sorry, and then Heroic are going to beat Mals in the best of three upper bracket to just go through, and then Mals and Sprout in the lower bracket. And I just simply think Sprout have the better firepower to actually deal with Mals than the other way around. Like, these guys have been playing what now it's like two. I think this is now the second consecutive LAN that they're playing in a row, and Cologne will be their third. So I think some of those LAN jitters, like they've got young players. I
Mm-hmm.
think people
Yeah.
kind of overlook the fact that these guys are so young and inexperienced. Like Longs is 17, Stare is 18. I want to say.
He's 18, 19. He's also a teenager, pretty much, still.
Yeah.
Even though
So
he looks
these
really good at the Pro League they played. Just himself. No one else
he's
really did.
17.
But
So he's turning 18 in July, mid July. So
word, yeah.
basically 18. Either way, these guys are the two heavy hitters for Sprout, and I think the fact that they've been able to get a little bit of consistency going LAN to LAN to LAN is gonna actually boost their performance quite substantially because as much as players might complain about like the fatigue of constantly traveling when you're young and just getting started and these are your first experiences, that adrenaline just keeps flowing and then eventually you
Yeah.
reach like a zen point or like a plateau point where you actually do just perform better. So I have Sprout sort of making it through a little bit of a surprise.
Okay. Not sold on Sprout by a long shot. I actually think they're one of the tougher brackets to try and make it through. Mouse Pain, I have them both pegged a little higher. Pain
Okay.
is more of a toss-up, but I don't think Mouse should. Hence why you said crumbled, because they are supposed to be beating Sprout. I think Sprout are an AWPer away from being a real team at
I'm
this
just not
level.
convinced by JDC and that whole
Okay.
debacle, to be honest. Yeah.
Uh, I just don't like Sprout. That's just me. I'm not a big fan of Sprout.
They've
Like,
been they've disappointed, I think, too many. Like,
yeah.
I fully understand. I've rooted for Sprout in so many different events because I'm like, oh, these guys have been grinding away at tier 2 for such a long period of time. They're due at a certain point. Like, they should just reach that precipice, but they just never do. And yeah, I don't know. They've got some massive choking issue with that org somehow.
I mean, I just don't think they've put the faith in the right players in key points. Like, I just don't think Slacks is the solution, an AWPer to be playing at this level, really. I don't think he's particularly good. I think that's just puts a cap on them, because otherwise you're relying on your riflers doing everything. Having momentous fucking performance after performance.
Mhm.
It's not really something you can rely on, so I'm not really sold on the roster. My dark horse, though? This is going to be I wouldn't call it a stretch. I would call it... let's put it this way. I wasn't expecting to pick this when I sat down. This was not
Okay.
who I planned to pick, but over the last couple days, 0 Nation have proven that Taco is a better IGL than Cold Zero, which I think everyone already knew. But I didn't quite understand that they'd be able to bring this kind of level to the team. Like, sure, Dumas was always Brazil's next great hope, an absolutely outstanding player, hybrid, can do it all. He's been amazing. Cold Zero looks far more comfortable. I want to see more from Try again, but I think this is a perfect event. After building off their Valencia performances so far, I think 0 Nation are going to be a really, really tough team to beat. Like, they're going to play fun, they're going to play explosive, and they're going to really have a lot of momentum coming in to the point where I think, yeah, they can easily come through this bracket. Sure, it's not going to be the easiest one. They're going to probably play Complexity in the lower bracket and then defeat Spirit or Astralis to make it through. But with enough factors playing into this, with the different roster changes, like Spirit had to make a roster change. They're a fresh team with very little to prep about them. They're playing some young players who are very explosive. I think they've got it just what it takes to squeak through this kind of tough but manageable bracket.
Yeah, Zero Nation are a bit of a weird one because I actually think 2-3 months down the line, these guys are going to look so much better.
Right?
Whether it's with Cold or not, I think that's the one question mark that I have because I think there were even rumors that they were going to get rid of Try. Um, but the fact that they have brought in a core, I tweeted about this as well. The fact they've brought in a core and they've also brought in the coaching staff from that old Godsent roster actually
Mm,
makes a big difference. Like if you consider that a lot of these stars that got brought into Zero Nation got basically brought into like the chaos of okay, which spots are we gonna do? They have to build everything from the ground up.
yeah,
There is no foundation lay. I think that the fact that there is that core already, like already you're pushing your AWPer to be in a spot that you have configured in your previous roster to a certain degree, or you're pushing Cold to be in one of the more floater spots that is kind of left over because you're not bringing in a core and then saying, "Oh, I'm the star. I deserve all these spots." Because one, Cold isn't a star anymore.
yeah,
Two,
not really, no.
the system is shown to work to a certain degree. So you have to show and sort of buy into that system. So I actually do buy your 0 Nation hypothesis to a certain degree, but yeah, I do worry against a team like Spirit, especially. That was the only point because I think I almost put them through in my sort of I did like a mock
Yeah.
play-in bracket. I almost put them through against Spirit as well, but when I thought about just how much Spirit surprised at the major, I just yeah, I was worried. I don't even have that much belief in the wonderful acquisition, but I'm still I think worried for Zero Nation because I think Spirit are just like they're just such a hard team to read. So I don't expect they're gonna be able to react in time, basically.
Yeah, Spirit would be a tough one to beat, a tough one to overcome, really. I see it mostly because I expect the team to be better than they were at Valencia already, and then I expect them to be young, loose, and fun. Like in terms of
Yeah.
their star three. Uh, Again, we need to see more from Try. That was the big sticking point. I think Try needs to be the prospect he was coming in. Like, he started off on the team when they were new, banging people out, Albs was also outstanding back then when he was still on the roster. They over time were not able to sustain it. I want him to see him back at that level under a new IGL with a bit reinvigorated. I think they can take him out. It's just, yeah, they're not coming as favourites. They're definitely going to be dark horses all the way in this run, except when they're playing Complexity, because who's not favoured to beat Complexity anymore?
Yeah, that team is so disappointing, man. I've
Yeah.
like every time I've watched Complexity, I'm like, oh yeah, you know what? They've had enough time. They'll get better. And then seeing some of the mistakes that are made, it's actually like it's. I'm not even an NA fan, and my heart breaks.
Yeah, some of the juniors. Oh, it's like a Counter-Strike horror movie. Times it's like no, don't. Oh, he's dead. He's dead. He's not again. Please.
Like, why is he jumping around the corner with his knife out? Or
why has he gone and done that? Just why? So often, I myself scratching my head and thinking, why? Oh, yeah, that's the only game they're really favourites in. But as I said, who isn't? But right, that's kind of the picks, I guess. We're expecting Big to go through, right? Outsiders to do pretty well. Overall, we're ending up with basically 6 teams, and then there's those maybe spots that we were trying to address there with the dark horses. Yeah, MIBR, I think expecting to show a little more so. Movistar Riders. They're in the same bracket as well. So one of them's got a good chance. They just have to beat Tai Lu and then each other.
Yeah, I know. I remember doing that mock, and I was thinking like MIBR or Movistar in lower bracket, and I don't even know which one of them ends up in the lower bracket first because they play in the first round. So
yeah,
it's good news though. Movistar in Valencia at the moment have played like unbelievable Counter-Strike as far as I've seen. Like
really?
I think it was like they've only dropped like this isn't an updated stat, but they'd only dropped like 4 rounds prior to the second map of the Sprout series in like 3 best of 3s, I think. 2 best of 3s. Or a best of 1 and a best of 3, I think.
So far they've beat Hummer 16-0, MIBR 16-3, Sprout 16-5, and now it's 10-8 in their current game. So yeah, they've been having quite an easy time of things.
Yeah,
Valencia, at least.
I think the stat was like they were 43-4 or something at the end of the first half against Sprout in the first map. So it's like, yeah, I think they're playing good CS at the moment, or at least if that's how their matchup against MIBR is going to go in Cologne, then hey, may as well just give it to them.
Both teams need to step things up, but MIBR clearly a little more than Movistar. Movistar on home turf, yeah, playing really well, taking a lot of scalps, including MIBRs, but it's never quite that simple to event, is it?
This was always the problem with the MIBR move because they brought in Brennison and he's not an AWPer to AWP, so like against lower teams you can get away with it. Like I think at the conference event we were like, oh yeah, this looks pretty good. I think the system showing that it's building or it's developing. But as you play better and better teams like that, you get exposed way more. Like we saw it with the Armanek AWPing, saw it with the Nico AWPing as well. Like you can try and push players to fulfill a different role, but the skill gap at the higher end becomes so much more noticeable.
Yeah, that's something they have to address if they really want to be a team that contends for anything more than just borderline top 20 status.
Yeah.
But we'll see if that actually comes to be. But no, those are kind of the play-ins. But the main event, we've already got 2 groups split up. So in the Group A, we have NAVI, NIP, ENTS, and G2, which is amazing, honestly. Straight off the bat, what a group that's going to be. And the other one's FaZe, Liquid, Cloud9, Furia. And you think, yeah, well, NA had to go somewhere. So there they are. Group B a little weaker, at least on current form, especially with Furia losing that game to 0 Nation. I don't think there's many believers. But speaking of belief, tell me your favourites out of this lot.
I believe in Na'Vi. I've chosen them as my event favorites. It feels like a bit of a cop-out to a certain degree because they look so good at Blast.
Yep.
But I think when I first heard about the Sumdai Young coming, I think our last discussion about Na'Vi was about who was going to be who is going to end up calling for Na'Vi. It was either going to be Perfecto or Electronic, and I think I assumed it was going to be Perfecto because I thought it would affect Electronic's game too much. But I had really underestimated how much that prep document seems to help the Na'Vi team succeed. Because even when some Young comes in, he's reading through that dossier that Blade has built for them, and he's looking through like the flow chart of if this, do this. and it seems to just work. And it doesn't seem to affect the fragging potential of the squad either, which just means that Sun Young is actually just a flat out upgrade to Boomich to in a certain degree. Because a lot of people were talking about like Boomich doesn't frag; he just throws out suicides. He, towards the later end of his tenure, he was certainly having a lot more impact. Um, but should he not have had that impact in the first place if he's not having to do the same level of critical thinking? Or maybe he was doing a lot more thinking than was needed. I don't know. Um,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
but
Well,
I like this version of Navi. If they've got just like another flat out fragger and they've got a flow chart of ideas that they don't even really need to think too hard about, I mean, I just feel like it's an easy pick for me.
yeah. I mean, I was one of the people questioning what it is Boomich brings as an IGL during that entire tenure with Blade coming in. So it was quite obvious there was so much of the game plan pre-prepared, and then even the mid-rounding felt like it was always off the back of the individuals making the reads and making calls. Like it felt a little more. It's not really necessarily loose. It's just this guy has this area, this control, this understanding. He tells you there's no one here. We're going to move. Like it never felt like a particularly IGL centric team in that sense. And so yeah, putting Electronic on it has clearly worked. SDY has been. If you've watched some of his POVs from this event, the flash timings, the way he's like supporting with utility, it's like he's been a part of the team for 2 years. Like literally, you saw Bit. I think on the overpass game. This was the one that really blew my mind. Was watching that overpass against Vitality. Bit's like fighting someone, dances, ducks down. The flash from SDY pops, goes back out, fights, takes another kill. It's all in one fluid motion. You're like, this is not a team playing with a stand-in. This cannot be a team playing with a standing. Their first event, it was nuts. So if they keep that up, yeah, they're clear and obvious favourites. I of course have not picked them because that would be boring. I've picked their regional rivals, I guess, in Cloud9, who finally showed us they can actually play on LAN in front of a crowd and win events not too long ago. Like, they actually gave us something to be really believing in when it comes to Cloud9's level. Yeah, they won Dallas. They didn't do great in the Rubeck Cup, but I told every team, like I tweeted, I want every team who actually cares about winning Cologne to just not care about Rubeck Cup. Like, it's a bit of prize money. I don't care if your boss gives you a smack around the ear. It's not worth the time investment to like perfect your game to peak for the Rubeck Cup when Cologne is the next week. So I'm not too bothered about anyone's results there. But yeah, their Dallas run was amazing. They didn't beat NAVI, to be fair, and they didn't go to Blast Premier Finals, so we don't get to see them play each other just yet. But I think this event, their individuals are going to be on form. Their counter they're playing is looking quite nice. Overall, they have a great chance of making it through. It's just a question of, can they defeat the juggernaut of the scene, it looks like, who has returned, which is Navi? Because FaZe don't look as scary, or is that just me? FaZe kind of died off a bit at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I remember my main talking points about FaZe was I didn't know that they had the same drive to succeed the same way that they did when they win the major and they have that lead up into it where they have so much success. I always just thought that the fire was going to die down a little bit because Carrigan's had a fire under his ass for as long as he's been an in-game leader of any team because of the fact he choked the major final against Cloud9. Um,
Yeah.
this team just had so much to prove. It was a first major win for the lot of them, and so that's as much of a driving force as it need be. Um, I do think that FaZe having a little bit of time off to prepare to a certain degree is going to help them, like after Blast. But yeah, I kind of agree. I do agree to a certain extent on your Cloud9 point. I'm so worried. Like I always think about the early interviews that Nafany gave about how like this guy was so it felt like he had such a big ego, or he was maybe even just putting it on for the camera to a certain degree. But it almost felt like Cloud9 stopped prepping as hard as they used to. And I'm just hoping that Dallas was like a return to that sort of mantra, that philosophy that they had, because it
Right.
felt like in certain matchups they just thought they were that much better, and then they would get destroyed. And it would just feel like a completely different version of the team. So yeah, I remain hopeful. I don't think that they're going to win the event, but I remain hopeful that they're going to at least show us like impressive runs, or like maybe even suffer close losses if it even comes to that.
Right.
So
Well, for Speak Cloud9, their group, I don't find myself being particularly worried. Like, it depends who comes out of the play-in and where they end up. It's a bit of a mystery, as you said before we went live, that where everyone's going from the play-ins. So it's a bit of a mystery who they'll actually have to face. Maybe their opening round game is Vitality, and they have to actually start struggling from game 1. But still, I think they should make it out of this group pretty comfortably. Yeah, maybe they'll lose to FaZe in the upper final. That's alright. Going into playoffs, yeah, I do have them as a strong favourite. I do think, though, when I said, I told teams who were playing Rubet, just kind of brushed to one side. FaZe did make the final of it, lost it to Big. You can think, oh, God, this Big team is so good.
Online.
Yeah, online, and FaZe should have been eyeing up this event. So maybe we'll see more of FaZe than we did post-major. Maybe your theory holds true that, it's just the pressure of the time, the build-up, the narrative for them to go in there and actually succeed, and then kind of losing that motivation afterwards. Hopefully they can switch it back up again. I want to see as many great teams as possible at Cologne. I want to see the best Counter-Strike everyone can offer. That's usually what is so great about this event. Talking about great Counter-Strike, do you have a dark horse to make it through groups and perhaps pose a threat late down the road?
Oh god, this is gonna be a real stretch, and if they don't make it out of the play-ins, I'm gonna really hate myself for it. I've chosen Outsiders because I think people underestimated how much of an upgrade this overall roster move was. I know people love Yakindar. I love Yakindar too. But the problem was in that team that this sort of Buster Kicker dynamic and the way that those players seem to interact with the team felt like it was just totally out of whack. Like they were sometimes wouldn't even see them throw flashes for Yakindar to find entries. Sometimes Buster would just die in the silliest way possible. Um, to now have such capable players like Norbert and Fame integrate into the roster, and not even like replacing these players role for role. Like I think we've seen Kickert, I think, go for the sort of first in duties for Outsiders in this new look roster, which actually just allows for more space for Norbert or Fame to succeed to a certain degree. Now, I don't think that their entries are going to be as sick. I don't think they're going to dominate rounds as easily because I think Kindar just had that kind of capability. But I actually do believe this to be a strong roster move in general for the Outsiders to maybe just steal away wins. I think people are going to underestimate them to a certain degree because they lose out so much star power, but we've seen the philosophy at Outsiders change continuously over the past year and a half with the removal of Sanji. We had Flit taking up more duties. We didn't have just like a piggy bank player on the team. We also see them go for more retakes and clutches. I think I'm beginning to like more of what I see of Outsiders in terms of their tendencies versus the boring old save everything and just worry about the economy of rounds and play all 30 of them as well. So yeah, they're my dark horse because I have strong belief, but maybe it's all misplaced.
It's quite a bold thing to say this is an upgrade, because as much as I have been very high on K23 players, the Fame, Norbert, I think two of them definitely had a place in teams like Virtus Pro. Yekindar, removing Yekindar and you get better, I can't fathom it.
So I'd put it like this. I would rate Yakindar 10, I'd rate Buster a 5. But I think that Fame and Norbert are like a 7 and 8 respectively.
So well, I both that to 15. Like
I know, but I think you're still getting on average better players versus the ones that you've lost. That's just the way I see it. Okay. Maybe Fame will upgrade into a 10. I don't know. Maybe Norbert will upgrade into like a 9. I don't know.
Both really good players. They're both really good riflers. I really liked the Outsiders style. Like I honestly, I was one of those few people, sat there happily munching on chips whilst they played all 2 minutes of every round, potentially saving just to win 16. They're not paid to win 16-3. They're paid to win 16 rounds, no matter how they do it. Yeah. So I was always very happy to watch it. I liked the weird lurking, disconnected style where you'd see like one player just casually walking into the opposite bomb site without the bomb by himself and just be like, "Oh yeah, guys, I want to rotate," and it's like 15 seconds and they're all knife out sprinting. I loved that stuff. I thought it was so silly and so cool, and surprisingly effective in a lot of ways, even when they did get countered.
Nobody would be silly enough to go at this time. Oh wait, yeah. We're against the Outsiders. I guess
it's Outsiders, guys. Of course. Yeah. How could we not see this coming? No, I'm hoping to be surprised. I think it'd be fun to see these guys, these younger players they've brought in, show up and show me up. show me to be a complete fool for not believing in them straight off the bat. Dark horse wise, though, I find it weird to call them a dark horse.
Okay.
Even though they definitely are. I've gone with the mighty ninjas in pajamas. Swedish gods, almost. One Danish guy still lingering.
Mhm.
It's a weird roster, but I feel like they have so many points of pressure, individuals who can just break a team when they're playing against, like break a round open, smash a bomb site in, completely wreck your push. Like, they have the rifle talent to beat anyone. And then after that becomes a question of, do you believe in the system to be able to make S-Tag an okay enough AWPer for it to work overall? Now, I believe, firstly, Rez, Hampus, Brolan, like as a trio of riflers, is almost unfair. But the only team who can match it is NAVI, when these guys are on form, especially. Like, sure, we're asking a lot of Rez to be on form for an entire event. I know, we're asking a lot, mate, but please, more than one good series at this one. Be lovely, but this is a roster who, if they get it together, the way we've seen them do various occasions, but rarely like for more than a month, rarely for extended periods of time, they could definitely upset absolutely everyone on the way through here. The change of coaching in DJL they did quite a while ago, but still we're seeing impact of it as their T-sides got better and better and better. Improving the personnel also helped in that sense, because Brolan is a monster fragger. Winning Get Esports Tour was the last time we saw them. It wasn't much of an indication, because they played what? OG, Nasser, and Mouse? Like, it's not much to go off. And they dropped a map to NASA, which was kind of terrifying. But now they're back with their full roster. They were playing with a stand-in, which is pretty typical for them. And yes, I think I'm reaching again on my dark horse. I always like to. But NIP is a team who consistently outperform my expectations of them. I always go into every event thinking, ugh, they've got to stand in again. These annoying Swedish guys, and they always finish in good placings. This is the roster they want to play with, allegedly. This is the roster they're preparing every event with now. They've had to deal with some stand-in issues again. But coming into Cologne, I think they're going to upset some people. I think they're going to upset a lot of people. And go on quite a deep run that they really have no right doing, considering how turbulent their last 6 to 8 months have been. How are you feeling about NIP?
6 to 8 months. How long has it actually been?
I feel like it's been
longer almost. I feel like
it's Device stopped playing officially in January.
Yeah, but they still had like this weird
before then, yeah,
4v4 and then 5 and then 4 and
yeah, then it was the Linus, S-Tag,
yeah.
Fuzi had to stand in.
It's been developing for like the past year and a half, I think. So
it's been a ridiculously long time, but they've claimed this is the roster. They've said this is the roster. I mean, obviously everyone just went, S-Tag AWPing is your dream roster, okay, but they said it and they believe it and they've actually trained and prepped as you would expect from a team with their full roster. I don't see why not.
He's an AWPer that can rifle pretty good, and he's got sick movement. You know, I actually love S-Tag as a player because he's who I wanted to be as a player when I had ambitions.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, he's damn good at KZ. That's all you need to know. Yeah, I think NIP's a strange one because I agree with you a lot that Brolan, all you need to do is like throw like one flash for him or like one smoke for him, and he'll find entries or he'll find kills, especially counter kills. That was what he was so good at doing on the old Fnatic roster. He just has like such a good instinctive read on where the next port of call is going to be. I I don't know that I buy into them having good form coming into this event in the same way that you're sort of speculating like that. What Get Dubai is not really a big deal. Also,
yeah, no, it's really not.
They also do that without their in-game leader. So, what does that say about the calling? Is that a knock on the calling, or is it just,
or is it a comment on their coach being amazing, as we all say about Navi the moment they start winning? They have a great coach, clearly.
Well, it's just so strange when there's more evidence for Navi because we see the binder.
Dossier.
Yeah, we see just how deep that document is. Whereas every other player seems to have internalized it. You know, nobody else has really jumped on that bandwagon in much the same way. I could see them causing an upset or two. I don't know that I would peg them to go much deeper than like sort of second in their group or third in their group, maybe.
Both playoff spots, aren't they?
Are they both playoff
Yeah,
spots?
second and third go through the quarterfinal. It's that sort of awkward setup again.
I see. Yeah. Okay.
I've,
Yeah.
I've,
No, I could see them making playoffs then.
they'll probably lose in the
See.
semis to Navi or something.
Mm-hmm. No, I could. I. It's so strange because they've just been like riding. Someone's told them about what the honeymoon phase is, and they've just been doing that continuously with the same players, cycling them in and out, just hoping that that honeymoon strikes at one point.
I just keep having fake weddings. Like before every game, it's just like, all right, I now declare you, man,
You may now kiss the coach.
and just keep the honeymoon going. I mean, yeah, it's a bit of a long shot, but what do you think about the number of events they've shown up at with various ridiculous roster variations, and then still somehow finish top four? And just like,
Yeah, they're the most
they're just
consistent,
casually.
inconsistent team ever. I
Yeah,
think.
the team itself is inconsistent, but the results attached to the NIP name rarely change. I'm sure.
Weirdly.
Been a long time since they've won anything that isn't get Dubai, but they're still a dangerous squad, and I think as a dark horse, they could make a really deep run. I don't think that's too wild. Who else do you want to touch on out of this group of players who are at the main event already? Liquid seems like an interesting one. With your favourite player, your Kindar, now standing in at 10 out of 10, yeah.
Nah, I think I'm just a sheeple when it comes to Yakindar because first off, if he hadn't done all these interviews and decided that he wanted to go on all these podcasts and things, a lot of people wouldn't even know he spoke English as fluently as he and articulately as he does.
Hmm.
Um, the fact that he's been able to get a chance on Liquid as a result of all the sort of press work and media work that he's done is a testament to all you players out there that refuse to do interviews and refuse to show your personalities. Like that is exactly the type of opportunity you get by putting yourself out there. Um, I do think it's gonna create opportunities for Liquid. I want to say it's gonna be hard for them to integrate Yukindar, but I've seen so many rounds watching back Outsiders demos where people just don't throw anything for him at all.
Just a
That
one-man army.
I think he'll be fine. Weirdly enough, I think it'll be a testament to the sort of prep work that they do because I think in some of the Yukindar interviews that we have seen, he's actually sort of shown and told us that he understands some of the tendencies or like understands how uh, the opposing team's setup is going to react to certain stimuli. Let's say so,
Yeah.
like take mid control. The I guess the ticket booth player on Mirage is going to move slightly and focus on Palace for X amount of seconds. I feel like he has that kind of information. So I think it will be dependent on how much prep work Liquid actually do coming into this event with a stand-in, because I think he'll want to get to work and he'll want to get that extra layer in. I don't expect them to do that well at the event. Aside from
Mm-hmm.
that, I think we'll see maybe a close 16-12, maybe a map winner or two over teams. But I think outside of my favorite, it would have been like Liquid, Ents, and then G2 as sort of, or it would have been Ents, G2 phase, I guess, is like the other three that I
Okay, I was
really
going to
wanted
say.
to pick. Rather, I was like,
Yeah.
I only brought up Liquid because we were talking about him. So
Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting roster move. Just to look at, see this the Kindar attached, like, oh, it's familiar. A Liquid being carried potentially by an Eastern
picking up
European
picking
in
up another
Cologne.
star European player.
Hmm. Especially one with a funny accent. Like, this could bring back some memories. Maybe not gonna. He's probably not gonna end up being the simple of Liquid, like in that sense. But I think it'll be a strange thing to see them play together because it's a massive upgrade in form, at least play for play. I mean, he doesn't have maybe some of Shock's intangibles, but he's clearly got a good mind on his head. Like, oh my god, he's still got clearly a very good mind for the game, and he, individually is such a nutty player. Like watching him, a lot of the rounds where he does get those huge multi kills, you're like, yeah, sure, you know the tendencies. You also know like the hell to put your crosshair because holy crap, he's just flicking, ripping people's heads off. You're like, yeah, that's not really planned, is it? That's just your Kindle being an absolute monster. It does raise some questions like where's he fit like in the system when there's also Naf and Liege. As Thorin put it, for your Kindar, you don't actually have role clashes. You're just making excuses. You can have your Kindar on your team, no matter who you are as a rifler. You can give him some fights. He is your
Like what?
Kindar.
You want to take the opening fight, bro? Go for it. Like you just let him do it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't see them making a deep run, but I've got a weird, like, like an itch that you can't scratch about them, that they're gonna mess up some gamblers. They're gonna ruin my picks somewhere. They're gonna be one of those teams, just a rat team to just come in and sneak a dub when they shouldn't have. I think the
Yeah.
other big team to talk about, Furia. Now, I've spoken to a lot of people who are getting very, very down on Furia recently. How are you feeling about them?
I I think our last conversation was about how Safe plays too safe. He actually
Yeah.
just doesn't play like the Furious style of AWPing, and Art was even taking up some of the responsibilities of enforcing that philosophy. Um, we've seen Safe kind of come out of his shell a little bit, but I don't think it's where Furia want to be. In terms of bringing in another AWPer that's supposed to fix their problems, it hasn't fixed it as easily as you would have hoped. It's a hard system to get behind. It's a hard system to adapt to. It's that much is clear. The only one that ever looked good in Furia's system was Henny, and
Hmm.
there's not many Opers out there like Henny in terms of how explosive they want to be. I think the best I can even think of that's not on a tier one team, like that's not like Monacy or Simple or someone of that nature, is like Annihilation, who's a
Yeah,
Mongolian player
I
that
know him. Yeah.
it just yeah he's just and he doesn't even play like that anymore. Apparently,
Oh, has he changed now?
if you've been following on NKT's journey, he just doesn't even play like that. He's also just
Oh,
joined IHC, so
I mean,
I
I was
just
a
think
fan of his on
it's
D13. Like on D13, he was quite
he's so
something.
ridiculous. He's actually just so ridiculous the way he
Yeah.
plays. Um, so unless you can find a way to unlock that in safe, or you can find another AWPer to replace that, I don't think that Furia are ever going to be to the standard that we expect from them. Like
Right.
I even bought into the idea that like them bringing in safe, he was the next best AWPer that they could get that was Brazilian that they could bring into this roster. It made sense, but can he fit the play style, and are they going to change for him? I just don't even know that that's happening, which is the worst part about it.
Yeah. Well, we saw them at Dallas, and yeah, they beat G2. They finished what, top 4 in the end,
Yeah.
which is, nothing to be sniffed at. But when you saw them play against the likes of Ents, and you didn't really feel this was a team who had legitimately had a chance to be the best team at the event. They looked a rung below, and part of that has got to come down to the Yorping, I think. Like Safe, I've seen a lot of great rounds from him, but on a rifle, like that's what's wild. It's like on a rifle, I've seen him have huge plays. As an AWPer, yeah, the explosiveness isn't there. The playmaking isn't really there. And whilst that's part of the thing that I think a lot of people will forget about the Henny times, was that Henny was not particularly aggressive. Like, Art's the opening kill guy. But then when you needed someone to just re-peek an angle 3 times, hit 3 flicks, and close out a round or win something impossible, you had Henny in reserve, ready to just unleash this final defiant turret, just take down half the team, do it all for you, and just, all right, wrap it up, go next. But yeah, Safe hasn't been that, especially not on the AWP. I don't know. I feel like we should be seeing more from Yuri and Keserato. I don't feel like I'm looking at 2 top 10 riflers, which is the standard they kind of built up during the Prime Furia days. Art was this monster with the openings, finding chinks in the other team's armor, finding spaces in the defaults to exploit. Then he had those 2 riflers to any situation after that, just clean it all up, like the caretakers to sweep through, pretty consistent, solid 2-for-1 fraggers. Like, any fight you give them, they'll take 2, then they'll go down. I don't think they've been that kind of team. I'm gonna have to side with a lot of people who are starting to feel like this Furia thing needs to be changed. Maybe it's the AWPer, maybe it's someone just did a coaching change. So I was like, maybe get one with a better Overwatch. Who knows? I heard
Yeah.
Zeus is pretty good at getting away with it. He's Brazilian as well. Oh, he's got the best lawyer in the game. He's got Mahone on his side. Like, it's all good. Clearly, they won the case of the century. That's such a ridiculous situation.
Yeah, I don't know. The whole Isak saga, every Isak saga just ends poorly. So
Let's not get too much into that. But I think a lot of the teams that are left, I think we're going to wrap things up because the teams that are left, we all know what to expect from G2. I think Ents is the biggest question mark left. As in, are they going to show us their major level? Or are they going to show us their, kind of mid Blast Premier Spring performances. They might be the biggest.
I mean, both Ents and FaZe have seen a dip in performance around the same time. Do international rosters just not do good around the summer period, or what? Do they only work well at the major?
New theory. It's they're temperature based. Is that what it is?
Temperature based international.
Over 22 degrees. No, international rosters crumble.
It's too hot. I can't understand you.
What? Oh, in Spanish, please. It's summer. Yeah, they have to switch language depending on the season. That might be it. Well, yeah.
I had high hopes
Hopefully
for
they bounce back.
rosters breaking the stigma. I really had like this hope that they would break the stigma that is attached to international rosters, and I think they have to a certain degree.
They have,
but,
yeah, they won the major phase, and Ents look really good.
There's this re-entry of doubt now creeping into my mind, at the very least, of like, can these actually work, or do they just work every so often? Is it like a burst performance on an event, and that's the most you get? I'm still concerned.
Yeah, with good reason. Well, Dallas Ents still finished second. They run extended a bit beyond the major, but I never really got the stigma, to be honest. I'm just like, there was never the right roster constructed. Like the phase with Nico was a problem.
I mean, if they win that major, no one doubts it, right?
Yeah, no one would, and they were that bloody close. But some miracle run from some Yanks had to go ruin everything again. Bloody hell! Why couldn't they have held that major somewhere cool? I could have gone. It'd have been the butterfly effect. I mean, it would have all changed. If they host that major in Paris, FaZe win it every time. They had to put it in Boston.
Hey man,
the Americans.
It's still the best storyline of a major win, I think.
It is. Oh, I just kind of hate it because now they keep talking about it. Give Americans not even an inch, like half an inch. They'll take whatever the long thing is in their calculations.
Yeah, I feel like the score esports.
Oh. Just gonna slowly mumble as the video ends because bloody NA.
No, you've upset me now that you've brought this up.